How's it going, guys? We're going to talk about arrays. Okay, so array. We've seen arrays before when we work with JavaScript. Remember that an array is like a bucket of or a grouping of values. Array are useful when you need to work with a list of items. We could do something like the code below, but it's going to get out of hand fast. So you could think of array as like values, and you could just put numbers in. And it's one of the most useful ones when you code. So you're gonna use arrays a lot when you start coding. It's going to be easier to group all these numbers into one bucket of numbers or an array of numbers. Let's turn these into an array. So here you're gonna just use int. You're gonna have here. You start off your array. And you guys work with arrays before, in JavaScript. So you just have my array, and here you just have the values you're gonna have. Take a look at the syntax above. The name of this array is my array, and it holds integers. We let C# know this is an array of ints by including the square brackets. After the data type, lastly, we set the value by giving a list of integers in a curly brace. Now we can access the values by their index, the array. The value 1, 2 is the first number in the array, so it starts at a 0. Remember, everything starts from 0 to 9. Arrays in C# starts at 0 just like they did in JavaScript. So the value 105, which is second in our list, would be at index 1. So you just write console.writeLine, and here you just have whatever your array, the name of your array. So here it'll be my array and then 1. So here it's just going to be pointing to 1, which is 105. Okay, so the value 105, which is a second on our list, would be at index 1. And lastly, the value at list 10 would be at the index 9. The final one in the array. Remember, you always subtract 1 from the total number of values in the array because array starts at 0. So here, console.writeLine, my array 9. We can easily look at all the values in the array by looping through them. So this code reads, for each number in my array, print the number to the console. Notice that we have to specify that the value, the variable called number, is it int. We could have called this variable anything we wanted as long as it matched the my array data type. So for each, so you just do for each, and here you have integer number in my array. And then here you're just going to put console.writeLine. So when you do console.writeLine, it's just going to write one line. So if you just do console.write, you could, it'll just tell you what the user you want to prompt into write. And then if you just put console.readLine, then you could just read the line of the console. So one thing that is different in C# is that arrays can grow in size after being created. The size of an array or its length is the number of value it holds. My array holds 10 values, so we say its size or its length is 10. Now, I could never have more than that because that's the length it was given when created. So console.writeLine, and here you're just going to have my array.length. So here it's just telling you how many numbers you have, or exact array you have. So what happens if we want to try to get a value from this array beyond its 10th value? So here you just read for each int number in my array, console.writeLine number. So it's gonna write number in here, console.writeLine my array.length. So it's gonna type in the length of my array. So after that, you do console.writeLine my array.length. Okay, I just said that. Integer some number equals my array, and then 50. So here just pointing out that 250, some numbers is going to equal to my array 50. So C# goes nuts and throws an error. The program stops working and quits. This is called an out of bounds error. You try to reach a number outside of an array, and C# said no. So no one of the big downside to an array is you have to know or guess how many value it will hold, and once you set that number, you have to stick to it. However, you don't have to set the values when first making the array. You can start with an empty array full of empty slots. Here's an example of 1000 index and all of them are empty. Then we set the value of index to 600 to 99. So here you're just doing big array is equal to 1000 and big array 600 is equal to 99. Arrays can hold strings, bools, integers, doubles. It's just any data, any type of data, or you could make it even, a string of text. Lastly, arrays can mix their data types. The way we can do this is using a data type object. This code creates an array called mixed bag that has different kinds of data. There's a downside to this, and that to make the array item behave like you would expect it to, you will have to cast convert it again at some point. So array is pretty cool. I'm pretty sure you guys could also concatenate the array. So what is concatenate? When you have a number right here and you want to add a number to the end, so that's what you do when you concatenate, and that'll be useful when you start coding also. Objects, mixed bags. So here you just have like a bunch of different type of values, and string car is equal to string mixed bag. So here is pulling from 0, 1, 2 car to upper. So here it's going right to uppercase. So car will be uppercase, and that's what we'll do. So here are key terms: array, index, out of bounds, errors. Arrays on GitHub. You guys could download that. So that's talks about arrays. Let's go talk about your list. Okay. So if you're not a fan of the array in C#, you might be a fan of lists and array lists. Like an array list can hold a list of items or values. However, they don't come with the same size restriction. You can add, remove, or insert items into a list with ease, and you don't have to worry about getting an out of bounds error. The list will grow with you. So here, console.writeLine, you're just gonna write hello world. Apples will come out because here, so here let's go talk about array list. AL is equal to a new array list. So here the person is making an array list. So here AL dot add apples for each string item, and AL console.writeLine item. So here AL dot add, the first item will be apples, bananas, cherries. So it just goes in order. Namespaces. Before you can start using array lists, you can have to add a reference at the top of the C# file. So number one, using system. So here you're going to use the system data structure, and then you're going to use using system.collections data structures. So if we haven't made it clear exactly what this using business is at the top of the C# script, it's a .NET in action. This tells the computer to go into a .NET and get all the tools out of the system.collection drawers. The technical term for the drawer is namespace. Think of the .NET framework like a big cabinet. In the cabinet are drawers, each labeled like things like system.collections, system.math, and system.text regular expression. Normally these drawers stay closed. These tools are in a different namespace, and you can't get to them. Using namespace, and the drawer pops open, and then you get access to all the goodies inside. If you're wondering why we do this, there are two reasons. So I talked about this before class. These right here are just like libraries where you could just your code will actually have it could perform, do what it needs to do. So if you need to do like math operation, you use like using math.collections or something like that. If you're so it helps with size of the program, how much has to be loaded for the code to run. Since most of the time we only need a few tools, it wouldn't make sense to just load everything out of the master.net library up. Secondly, it helps protect us, particularly when we start writing our own web apps. There are some times where we really don't want to code over here in this file messing with code. from over there in that file and putting everything into namespaces help keeps things nice and orderly. Lastly, if you don't know which namespace something lives in, the Microsoft documentation will always tell you. Google up C# array list and right on top of the documentation. So, here's a good way to get a lot of your .NET library. Back to the array list. With the array list, we get a bunch of nice little built-in function method: .add, remove, sort, clear, insert, and reverse. So yeah, these right here, you're probably gonna need all these. These functions do exactly what they need, what they sound like. Want to remove everything from your list: myArray.list.clear, reverse the order of all the elements in the list: myArray.list reverse. So it's good to know some of this. There's one more version of a list to look at, and it's called list. It's what is known as a generic version. To use it, we need to add another using statement to our file. This time it's system.collection.generic. So here now you're just using generic. You see the syntax and usage for the list is pretty similar to the array list. So here you have list string. My list is going new list string. My list.add apples, bananas, cherries. So here you have a list. Here you're gonna have your so for each string item in my list, console.writeLine item. So there's your program. It was the same built-in method functions like add, remove, and clear. So this is gonna be your method right here. The biggest difference is the way it's created and in that it holds one kind of data type. In the picture above, you see that my list is a list of string values. When we create the array list, it's a data type. It's a data type was an array list and it could hold mixed data type. List has a performance boost over array list and enforces safe data types by requiring all the lists in the list to be of the same type. So array versus array list versus list, which one is better? There's not really a right or wrong answer here. I'm just gonna skip this. But you guys should know that there's different tools you guys could use. Array lists and lists are friendly to work with, and you don't have to watch out for index errors. In a situation where you expect the web application to use large lists, you need to squeeze every drop of performance out of system hardware. You might go with arrays. Other projects you don't have to have those issues. Lists are a great choice. So lesson file list and project on GitHub. Okay, so loops. For and for each loop. So the for might be the most famous loop of all time. The for loop is the type of flow control that has the computer repeat a block of code over and over in a loop until the condition to exit the loop is met. So here is a little bit complex, where you just use a little bit more logic and stuff like that. The setup of a for loop is always the same. There are three parts: variable initialization, declare and initialize a variable that we use in the condition and steps part. So int I is equal to 0. So here you're just starting your I, your first integer at 0. Here you have a condition. The condition is a Boolean expression which will return either true or false. So here you'll have I less than this array.length. So just saying that whatever your length is, this needs to be lower than that. And then here you're just gonna increment your I. So here it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then here it's always gonna be less, right? Or you're looping. Creating a variable called I as an integer and it's set to 0. If I is less than the total number of the items in the array, run the loop. Each time the loop runs, increase the value of I by 1. Alright, so that's so notice that like inside your for loop, alright, you have your semicolons at the end of each of your so your whatever you're doing, right? So here's your condition, here's your variable initialization, and here's your incremental or decremental part, right? So it's always gonna follow this type of rule right here. wherever you write your for loop. Um, and then you could always play around with it. The variable I will begin at 0, increasing by 1 each time the loops run. It will move through the array, getting the values at each index. It's important to start the value of I at 0 because the array index begins at 0. Otherwise, you miss the first value in the array. The variable will eventually become larger than the size of the array, and the loop will end. So once your condition is met, then this will exit out. All right, so most of this is just stored into your computer, whatever your register or instructions. And then here is just going to be your complexity code. For each can be used with arrays, array lists, and lists, and use a simple setup. Note the variable we call item here is made up on the spot. We can rename item up to the peanut butter and it won't make no difference. Okay, the while loop. So the while loop is a little bit more, so the for loop is kind of more simple. The while loop would be kind of a little bit more, if you're using like a longer type of code, you use a while loop. So while loop will continue to execute a block of code for as long as the condition is true. In the example below, the loop will run while x is less than 10. The biggest difference here is that while we create x outside of the while loop, we increment the value at the end of the loop. So we must be careful with the while loop, as it's possible to create a situation where the loop will never end. Say we forget to add x plus plus at the end of the loop would run forever because x will never increase. This will cause application to freeze and lock up. All right, so the x loop will just run to infinity if you don't correctly place an ending or like an exit, a condition that's met. So here, integer x is equal to 0, while x is less than 10. Keep going until console.writeLine value x 0 x plus plus. So here it's just saying x will keep going until x will be 11, which is not true, right? So you have to find something that it's met. So what do you guys think about this part right here?
It's a lot like JavaScript.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot like JavaScript. It's a lot more data oriented though, right? Like JavaScript, you never have to like pull in any type of library. While this right here, you're coding. You're figuring out like, okay, if you need an array, you need to go to use an array library, put it in, and then you get to follow their guidelines, right? So to do an array, you do my array equals da 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 da. So do while loop. The do while loop is similar to the while with one execution. In do while, we guarantee the loop will run at least once. The conditional check errors at the end of the loop rather than the beginning, like for and while. So integer z is equal to 0. So the do loop is the same almost like for loops. It's kind of short. So console.writeLine value of I 0. So here it's just telling you that it's just gonna write this line and then it's gonna write z, right? So z is gonna keep going up, and then it has a while in here too. So while z is less than 10, it'll stop at 10, and then it'll break. Break and continue. So there are times when we want to abort a loop before it completes. And we have two tools to do this: the break and continue statements. Break is simple. Break will break out of the loop, and the loop will stop immediately. No additional runs of the loops will occur. So usually, you guys don't really use break or continue as much, unless you're like trying to stop a program from continuing or doing this thing. But mainly, break is not used a lot. In the code below, we set our counter into an incredibly high number of 9 million. On top of that, we issue a special command called thread.sleep6000, which makes the computer stop and wait 6 seconds before it does anything else. The program then asks the user if they wish to continue to wait. If the user answers with the end for n, the break statement runs and the loop ends. So here it just says the integer will equal to 1, while 1 is less than 9 million. Also write value of the counter. So here just telling you counter. So here it'll just go. It starts from 1 to 9,000. So here it says it's waiting at thread.sleep. So thread.sleep will make your computer stop and wait for 6 seconds, right? So 6,000. So if you keep minusing this, it goes down to like nanoseconds, milliseconds, and stuff like that. Console.write line. Again, it's just giving you another line of text, and then here string get me out of here equals console.read line. So here you're just gonna have a console line, the string that says get me out of here equal console.read line. If get me out of here is equal to n. So if you type in n, console write line, okay, shut down the loop early, break, you're gonna be here for a while. So just keep incrementing. So if you type n at any point, like the uppercase n, then it'll break. So it's a good break is a good test tool for debugging and stuff like that. Continue is like a soft reset of a loop. It tells the computer to stop the current run of the loop, skipping past any other lines of code in a loop, and restart it at the top of the loop on the next increment. Below is an example where we effectively skip ahead and the loop would continue. So here you have integer counter equals 1, while counter is smaller than 10. So here, put 1 right here. If counter is exactly 5 or counter is exactly 6, keep going up or continue. Console write line counter, so counter is going to be plus plus until the 10th, and they'll exit. So right here, 5 and 6, it didn't count that, because if the condition is 5 and 6, it'll keep continuing on. So why do you guys think it didn't count inside the console though?
I have no idea.
So continue is like a soft reset of a loop. It tells the computer to stop the current run of the loop. So it just tells the computer to stop the current run of the loop, skipping past other lines of code. So continue is just a way to just like, if there's a problem of 5 and 6, then just go ahead and skip over it. That's what continue does. So the source code for these loops is located in the list project on our GitHub. So like again, try to code these on your own before you guys copy and paste it. Okay, so lab, improve spam checker. So let's talk about your lab. Now that we learned about arrays, lists, and loops, we can improve the spam checker in lesson 3. In this lab, we want to write an improved version of the spam check that checks a list of words from a blacklist and use a for a loop and to check all the words. So let's also cover all our messages to a lowercase so that things we don't get missed hits due to capitalization. Here are the words to our new blacklist. So go ahead and blacklist buy, Viagra, triple X, free money, lifetime offer, send money, bank account, Nigeria, online pharmacy, hate, meet girls. So these are mostly like things that scam artists would use these keywords, and you're just gonna blacklist this. So that it could be so this is gonna be something safer. So anyways, download the lesson 4 spam checker. I don't mind if you guys change some of these. All right, I don't really mind as long as it's just kind of like appropriately, like if it's a spam check thing. So lesson 4 spam checker on GitHub. All right, so lab trivia website leaderboard. In this lab, you will use lists and for each loops to practice working with collections. So you will work for a company that runs a trivia website. Users of the site complete by answering trivia questions to get the best score possible. One of the features of the site is that users are able to see a list of high scores. You've been asked to use C# to create the score leaderboard logic. You'll work for a large team, so someone else will worry about getting display on the page. Your task is to implement the code logic. You've been given these scores to work with. So here's your scores. Using C# list, do the following. Number 1, create a list that holds the scores you've been given. So sort the scores. So you're definitely gonna use array, sort, reverse, all that stuff, right? From lowest to highest to lowest, you've been given a new score that wasn't a part of the original list. Add the score to 2400 to the list. Number 5, a user has closed their account and needs to have all the information deleted. Remove the score 44 from the list. You just use remove. To view the lab solution, go ahead and I said go ahead and try practice on it. But then you guys need to reference it, right? Okay, 4-6 lab to do. So here's your another array. In this lab, you'll be working with arrays and for loops to get practice on working with a collection scenario. You're working for a company that runs a to-do list web app. The website allows users to type in a task for each day of the week so that they remember to do them. You've been asked to use C# to create a small to-do list planner. As usual, someone else will handle how the code will work on the web, and you've been asked to write the initial test version of the logic. Requirements: the to-do list planner would cycle through each day of the week, pausing to let the user type in a task. The planner will save each task the user types in and display all of the days and tasks together. See the screenshot below for an example of the screen output. So here, this is going to be in your terminal. So here you just have an output of each task. Tips: you will keep each day in an array of days. You will keep the task in an array of tasks. You need to set up for each loops to loop through the days and tasks. So here you're just going to use loops, right? While, do, for. Those are the loops you're going to be using. So you're going to use do list, I think. Alright, so that's going to be your lesson 4. Go ahead and start working on it, and I'll continue for lesson 5 around 9:30.